And here we are on Whirlwind, and in the top right-hand corner, we have our Green Terran player from NsHoSeo. Star for them in team leagues, the one and only Sculp. And his opponent down in the lower left-hand corner. Not much else to say about this guy. He's our yellow Terran player who's won 3 games in a row, and he's done that time and time again for Team Liquid. It is the one, the only, Tasia.
So Whirlwind, of course, a really, really large map, does tend itself towards tends towards macro stuff. But you know, any map that really has those properties, it's like if everybody's like, "Oh, this is a macro map. This is a macro map." All of a sudden, strategies that are it's the same concept as metagame. It's kind of like a meta game.
Yeah.
Can we call it a MEPA game? I don't know. There's no good way to
meta game?
merge those two.
Yes.
Meta game. Oh, God. That's a mess. But, yeah, so, I mean, basically, guys, strategies that would typically be not so viable become super effective, if you will.
Sure.
In a situation where they are definitely still nerfed by the size of the map, but they tend to counter the playstyles because people don't expect you to do them.
And we mentioned before that Tasia can switch between a lot of different styles, and you mentioned that, you know, the example I like to give is something like Tal'Darim Altar, where you had, you know, some people would just use cheese a lot because you don't think that it's going to happen there, and it ended up working well. And in this case, Tasia is going to go after a refinery first, into a barracks, while his opponent goes for command center first. And if he's able to get in there with maybe some cloaked banshees or something like that before his opponent has time to react, it could end the game very quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gas first definitely indicating that as a possibility. Sculp is going to be going for a command center first, which doesn't set him up particularly for any large amounts of trouble. It's really going to be his follow-up here. If he opts to go for a quick 2 gas, you could be looking at a little bit of a difficulty. Now, of course, the Banshee does have a pretty long route to cross the map, if that is the route that we see out of Tasia. So actually, if you rush towards a starport and a Viking, you'd be okay. But other than that, there's the factory. Real question is going to be, is there a second gas follow-up here?
I don't know. Well, he'll start building it in about 20 seconds, if it is going to be. That's a normal spot while the factory's going. Yep. Or he's going to do it even earlier. Wow. And, all right, so he's going to open up with some very aggressive tech. Now, we've seen some players that have decided to just move straight into some sort of a super strong time that actually coincides with, no, it looks like actually he's going to build the tech lab right now, and that's going to coincide with the finishing of the factory, lift off the barracks, and put the starport right there. But he may still give us some sort of a curveball.
No, it's really nice to see that, because if your opponent runs an SCV into your base, remember, he has no wall off or anything of that nature. So if you run the SCV in, the potential for Blue Flame Hellions is still on the field, even if it's not the route that he opts to go. So if that SCV, you know, had come in, he doesn't know right away, oh my God, are you going for Cloak Banshees, or are you going for the Blue Flame Hellion? I can't be sure. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be until later that he would find out. But if there was no tech lab, well, you're obviously not going for the Blue Flame, because you would have a tech lab started. So, you know, a nice little subtle touch there for Tasia, trying to keep the possibility of an opponent being in the dark even more. But Sculp is just now actually going to start realizing where his opponent is, assuming he does run to the left. There's always a possibility he could actually run across the map. But yeah, so Tasia, you know, he's moving his factory now actually to complete the wall off. Mm-hmm. But that is a pretty big giveaway in most circumstances.
That
was interesting.
Yeah, that was a little bizarre, but
hey, push-ups, man.
Yeah, well, sure, okay. Just testing, making sure that starport can actually lift off in the event of a base trade. It'll be good to go, so we have that at least.
Status confirmed.
Yes, well done. Tasia has his first Banshee coming up right now, and unfortunately, despite the fact that he had all these buildings at the front, Sculp's SCV gets in and sees everything. It sees the tech lab working, it sees the starport is up, and he is, of course, going to be preparing for nothing but that engineering bay and a bunker already on the way.
Yeah, that was really bad for Tasia.
Oh, no! He almost lost a Hellion, too.
It didn't even get a volley off. So Tasia not having the best start here, which is really a testament to NsHoSeo's choice of who to pick here. I mean, he's going to have, we're going to find out, because the opening here for Tasia is certainly less than ideal. It's actually really, really bad. Sculp has had so much time to prepare now. So, I mean, Sculp should be able, assuming NsHoSeo, you know, pick the right player here. He's got himself set up. He's got the alley-oop, if you will, to victory.
Mm-hmm. And I like the pick of Sculp here. I think he's the guy who's best equipped to deal with multiple styles of players. So We'll see here what he can do, but TaeSha, we've seen in the past, has this uncanny ability even with, I think he finished up Cloak, yeah he did. Even with Cloak finished and his opponent having detection in play, still has this weird ability to still get in there and do significant amounts of damage, but as we can see, turret coverage is pretty great, it's everywhere, and TaeSha's going to have a very difficult time trying to move in against this.
Yeah, comes in, immediately starts taking some fire. Now he's going to circle around to the right, will catch a Marine or two. Scan actually going to go down. That's a little bit surprising. 270 minerals out when he, spent so much money already, making a very well fortified defense.
And this Banshee's going to try and circle back through once again. It is within the detection range of the missile turret, falls out of it. There's not actually a turret behind the mineral line here, so TaeSha still has the potential to do some damage here.
Yeah, he does. Already killing off a few SCVs. Suddenly, the turret positioning seems a little bit perplexing, especially towards the top left. Marines dying as well, waiting for another scan to go down. There it is. Banshee not really going to take any damage, getting knocked from 70-something to 50. 14, it will go down. A nice move there out of Sculp, but here comes a second Banshee out of TaeSha.
That's still 3 scans, though. 3 scans and 5 workers have been killed already. So TaeSha, like I said, still has an uncanny ability to get damage done. Not the best, and I think he knows that there's no scans available, so he's just going to pick off Marines.
And he hasn't seen the top command center for some time, so really, really nice calculation there out of TaeSha.
Okay, and looks like another missile turret's coming up, so he's forced 4 missile turrets out of his opponent, and this is actually pretty considerable resources lost. Yes, you have the investment that was actually put into the Banshees themselves, and that is very considerable, but TaeSha still found a way to at least make them work a little bit, and he's even on workers on 2 bases with his opponent.
62 supply to 58, not too much of a spread there. TaeSha's still sitting on 600 gas right now, though, so do expect, and he also just completed his 3rd base while he's doing all this harass, so he's doing a fantastic job of keeping Sculp in his base, concerned with these Banshees, while behind it he's playing with a relatively high amount of greed.
All right, does he have? Yes, he does. He has yet another Banshee coming out. He has that Raven on the way. He has the, what does he have for just general ground forces? No, it looks like he's switching into that production right now. His opponent actually doesn't have any tanks yet, so TaeSha is going to be slightly ahead with his tech altogether, but Sculp just going for primarily Marines at the moment.
It's actually a little, little surprising that TaeSha's actually ahead. 75 supply to 68 right now with the amount of investment he's had into tech. His Banshee's just really paying off their weight in gold, not even necessarily in units killed, but in all the turrets that they force. This is so bad for Sculp. Hellions going to get in right as those medevacs were carrying a great number of units out. Somehow a huge number of Hellions get taken out, but now he's into the main mineral line, Kevin.
Yeah, but he hasn't been able to do that much damage yet. For some reason, Sculp has had this weird ability to keep everything alive. He cleans that up. How many workers have actually been lost? 11 in total, but most of those came from the Banshees before. So that follow-up of Hellions, despite the fact that TaeSha knew exactly when to move in, didn't really do all that much damage. And it's a bit surprising there. Yeah, it actually takes the minerals lost, and or the resources lost, brings it back to even.
Yeah, he killed a couple of Marines there, but lost 6 Hellions, I do believe it was. So.
Yeah.
A heavy blow to TaeSha there, really surprising. Now going to cloak his Banshee, fall back, trying to target down a few more of those Marines, and does force the cancel on both of those supply depots, so very nice there for TaeSha. But I would love to see him get into that mineral line, maybe pick off a few of those SCVs that were so low on hit points. It does pose a significant amount of danger, though, so Sculp doing really well, not scanning there, because I think TaeSha would have loved to bait out a couple of a scan or two and see if he could capitalize on that.
TaeSha playing this mech strategy, and we'll see how it pays off for him. It obviously requires quite the investment, but it's a very fun brand at DVT. I like watching mech more than I do just your normal biomech or siege tank marine position. So we'll see here what he can do. This Raven, has it actually picked up on the medevac, or is it just happening to run away? I think it's just happening to run away at exactly the same clip as this medevac.
Neither of them have any idea. The other's just right out of their range. It's kind of like a giant monster sitting right around the other end of the door, and you walk through and then die. And we'll see if that medevac may get a hold of that Raven. If it's not queued all the way back home. Actually, take a look at the Raven. Is it?
Let's see, the Raven?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he sent it. It looks like, yeah, he must have sent it all the way back to his base.
Yeah, I think he did.
So plenty to rejoin with his army, I guess. But Sculp, either way, guys, now going to see that TaeSha is flying out this 3rd base, most like. The drop actually coming in a little bit early.
Yeah, and looks like it's going to try and get in and do some damage. Actually, with all the Marines down, it could take out a couple of these Banshees pretty quickly. Ah, the Banshees actually cloak up, and everything's immediately destroyed because the Hellions were in perfect position to ward those away. So another big loss for Sculp, and Tasia secures himself a third base. We do have a movement here up in the top left-hand corner, but the Barracks would be able to pick up on that pretty easily.
So Sculp and Tasia both taking on their thirds around the exact same time. I do like that Sculp placed a Marine at the fourth base. So that he will know the timing of the expansion, assuming that Tasia doesn't check it beforehand. But ultimately, I mean, at this stage, Tasia, guys, is up. He's up by, well, looking about, actually only about, no, as I was saying that, it went from like a 15 supply advantage to 4.
That happens. Well, that happens with Bio, too. You're probably going to have
faster.
All things considered equal, you're going to accumulate supply a little bit slower. Your upgrades are going to be online a little bit slower as well. Tasia, though, needs to think about another command center right now to dump a few of his extra resources into, just so we can start to secure that very important 7th and 8th gas as a mech player.
Tasia cleaning up that Marine we were talking about earlier. The upgrades for both players. Taking a look here, we see Sculp's units do possess...
Let's see here. Got it.
1-1. Okay.
Yes.
Actually, we saw that he just started the +2 armor now.
Yeah.
And looking at Tasia, I mean, he's got the +2 weapons and plating on the way. So that mech is just going to be ever... That's actually really impressive that he's got +2 on the way already, but fall back with these Hellions as he sees, okay, Sculp, you're actually hanging out at the Xel'Naga Tower with quite a little fortification.
Yeah.
And that's really good out of Sculp because you need to make sure you stay mobile against mech. You can't let them get too greedy.
Exactly, because a mech player just wants to sit back, build up to about 150, 160 supply, and then move out and crush you. And that's just what they're designed to do. And Tasia is at about that mark, but of course he's invested a little bit more into his air than I don't want to say a normal mech player, but he's going to want to wait for a little while longer until he makes sure that he has more Hellions, more tanks in place before he starts to get aggressive.
Certainly, you know, conventional mech strategies don't include such a large investment into this guy, so Tasia just, you know, really catering, I think, towards a longer duration, if you will, of a game, because the Vikings really kill off medevacs, so it makes it difficult for you to sustain your bioforce and really try to get Sculpt to force to make units in the sky. So, but ultimately, yeah, Tasia just hasn't been able to get an engagement going yet, as Whirlwind, of course, just kind of has this central convening area where all the units must meet.
Looks like this drop was picked up on very quickly. Tasia's able to ward that away. He also has more command centers just finishing up. Looks like this one's probably going to be turned. Well, see, he could actually take 2 bases and reserve yet another orbital back at home, but he's got a pretty good economy to fall back on when all is said and done, going up to factories number 6 and 7 at the moment. With his investment in air, I'll be curious to see if he decides to go for a Sky Terran in a bit. Oh, he runs actually headlong into a couple of tanks, but with just a couple of Banshees there, he's able to start driving those away and hopefully take position on the map.
Now, I don't expect Tasia to push too hard here. He doesn't want to force the fight right now because he's only a few seconds away from completing 2-2. So he's kind of just poking and taking free hits where he can. But no, the full engagement's going to come about 15 seconds before 2-2 for Tasia. Hellions at the top doing an okay amount of damage, but honestly, not that much. Sculp getting a great amount of damage done on these tanks, but ultimately does lose all of his bioforces on the field towards the front. More reinforcements going to be coming in to fill in the gaps, along with a Thor as well to help deal with these Vikings and Banshees. And it pretty much comes to a stalemate. Both players at exactly 146 supply, and unfortunately for Tasia, 2-2 just finished.
2-2 did just finish, but 2-2 just finished for him too, and he does have all of his, or I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, he has his upgrades up just a little bit too late there, but Sculp, you know, he doesn't have a big force to come back and really power ahead with this. Now starting to reinvest back into his Thor count, but since there's not so much of an air contingent, it's not going to be as important for him, and I don't like him as much of a siege breaker. I'd rather wish he used it a little bit more flexibility, because this is going to be the true damage dealer, and this is what you need to do against mech players. You need to get out on the map, you need to pull them back from being able to charge forward. And oh, he's running forward and not sieging up, and he runs headlong into bio units, losing 2-3 of his tanks right away before they're able to do any damage, and he still can't rally back against this. That's a huge advantage for Sculp.
That's an incredible lead. Look at the supply plummet for Tasia down to just 128 to 175. This Thor continuing to do so much damage. It's an incredible unit versus tanks, of course, because the splash damage is so negated by a clump of them that one by itself. Well, of course, there is no splash. So Tasia, guys, down to just 120 supply now, 160 for Sculp. Sculp also taking out that expansion, has complete and utter control of this game right now, Kevin.
Yes, he does. And morphing in another orbital command, so he's feeling very safe. He's not worried about planetaries anywhere, just wants to power ahead with his economy. Has another command center finished up to flip over to an orbital and help supplement the amount of mules he can put on the map. He could also float it down to the bottom right if he wants to. 3-3 upgrades well on the way now for TsHoSeo. Not been started yet for Sculp, which I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, I guess he was investing more into mech units at that stage of the game, but they're certainly nice to have, especially with the advantage he's gained himself.
Here goes Sculp with the attack that could end the game. I mean, if TsHoSeo loses his fourth, he's pretty much down and out. He's only going to have one mining base, so really needs to hold on to this at this moment, and we see his positioning is excellent to do exactly that. But here's the problem. TsHoSeo can no longer go and grab a fifth. He does not have the units to spread out enough in order to facilitate such an expansion. Trying to do a little bit of harass with some Hellions, but ultimately going to get things cleaned up.
Kills a few workers, though. It looks like that does even up the workers between our two players. So TsHoSeo, because of the more orbital commands, with a slight economic advantage, but nothing really to write home about. Mostly the gas income that's very, very good for him now. So he's trying to reaccumulate the army that he needs in order to start wresting back control of the map. But Sculp just found such a beautiful engagement before. If he gets another one like that, it could seal the deal for him.
Definitely could. Blue Flame Hellions coming in right now, doing a fair amount of damage to that tank, actually. But the spread here from TsHoSeo is really, really nice. He just needs to make sure he does not get caught unsieged again. Remember that engagement was actually a little bit southeast of here, if you will. He just lost such a large quantity of units and did not do enough damage. But Scan's going down to keep in very good position on the opponent's army. Gonna be moving in now. Catching a couple of tanks out of position, but looking at the bottom quadrant, we see a huge flanking attack here from Sculp. The Hellions not buffering for a lot of these tanks being cleaned up at such a good cost, but a lot of the units actually now caught in a retreat path by the Blue Flame Hellions, and suddenly the game looking pretty equal again as only a 7 supply spread between our two players.
Now, TsHoSeo actually did a really smart thing there, and that's what I was looking at there. Whenever you saw his vision, as soon as he cleaned up the Marine that was taking control of the Zelnaga Tower, that's the moment he chose to move in, because he knew that the vision of the opponent's tanks was actually quite limited for a while. Oh, but Sculp's just going to try and press it once again. We'll see if this is going to work out for him. There are still a lot of Hellions here which are absorbing those shots that we were talking about before. Most of the Bioforces have gone down, but there's still enough left over. The last couple of tanks don't stand a chance, especially with that Thor swinging around the side.
Such a good spread here from Sculp. None of these, look at these tanks, they're all firing at a single Marine, a single Thor, a single Marauder. Everything beautifully spread there by Sculp, and very, very evident that he premeditated spreading out his units, and TsHoSeo is going to pay the price for Sculp's preparation. Now down once again to a 50 supply spread.
Okay, units tab shows that players are even on workers, but look at this. The tank count is actually superior for our non-mech player right now in Sculp. There's a few Hellions that are down, yes, but against 12 Marauders, 23 Marines, and additional Thor and Medivacs just to be able to sustain those bio units, things are looking pretty bleak for our Terran player from Team Liquid at the moment.
Yeah, Sculp looking really, really good, and maybe going to bring NsHoSeo back into this. We're going to find out he's going for the 4th base at this time, and once again, we're talking about how TsHoSeo cannot afford to lose this base. If he does, he's pretty much out of it. You see it's up planetary. It's going to be hard to kill. The SCV's immediately starting to repair it as Sculp is focusing it with a large portion of his units, but does opt to fall back for the moment. There are too many SCVs there.
Yes, there are, and he needs to roll up a few more tanks. Even just getting a couple of tanks right here would give him what he needs in order to start taking out this SCV slowly but surely. Nice job floating that Thor to the back there and getting it around the tank line so he didn't have to walk it out into danger of his opponent.
Sculp trying to shell away on these buildings. Meanwhile, going to be sending a flanking attack, and he's taking his 6th base now while all of this is going on. So things looking extremely good for our NsHoSeo Terran.
Okay, well, what is in position to defend against this? Nothing. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Everything for TsHoSeo is committed to defending this push over here next to the Planetary Fortress. He has gone back to mining now, and I think he's in for a bad surprise whenever this moves up. Few tanks were actually pushed in position. That is going to help at least for the time being, but the 3 tanks up at the front getting immediately destroyed, and nothing is left now to defend this orbital command.
And this is going to be the beginning of the end for TsHoSeo. He cannot afford to lose these SCVs. This mining base, it is one of the last vestiges of hope he's currently in possession of. Now, we don't see Sculp moving forward on the left-hand side while this is going on, but that's just because he's too busy killing. TsHoSeo's army comes in with a nice flank maneuver, cleans up the tanks. 98 supply. TsHoSeo dipping below 100, decides to tap out.
There's GG, and the monster himself, TsHoSeo, has finally fallen here. He takes 3 wins, but can't quite close the deal for Team Liquid, and NsHoSeo breathing a little bit of life back into their chances to make it into Premier Division.
TaeJa doing so well for his team, though, really setting them up now to bring somebody in and finish this series. We'll have to see who it's going to be that they do choose to set up against Sculp.
And it looks like it's going to be the Manor Zerg himself, our first non-Korean player of the match. It's going to be Chef. So Chef coming in to try and close things out for Liquid, trying to do what TaeJa couldn't and close out NsHoSeo. We're going to run to a commercial break, but when we come back, it'll be time for game number 8.